All right, that was a short sample from a brand new record by Kevin Kastning. and Mark Wingfield. Mark and Kevin, thank you so much for joining. You're both on mute, so before you start talking, make sure you unmute. But wow, what an adventurous record. It is. It's called I Dreamed of Invisible Journeys. Who wants to introduce this new record?
I'll let Wingfield explain it a bit. He's much more eloquent than me.
I don't know about that. But thanks so much for having us, Anthony. It's really nice. Yeah, this is one that we actually recorded a little while ago. Previous to the album before that, I guess it was maybe, I don't know, when was it, Kevin? 2016, something like that?
I think that's right, yes.
And I think we recorded 2 albums in that session and released one of them. And before we got around to releasing the second one, we already had another recording session and recorded a new one. And it just kind of got left on the shelf. Not because we didn't like it as much as the other one, but it just, circumstances happened. And then we suddenly thought, we've got this album that we never put out. And so that's why we've released it kind of a little bit out of order with some of the other albums that was recorded around that time.
And this is, you've recorded many albums together. How many, is this your 6th or 7th together?
7th, I want to say it's the 7th that we've released, but we have 2 or 3 more finished unreleased, and we're already starting work on the next 2.
Excellent. So, Kevin, tell us how this works, because obviously what we're hearing is improvised music. And the title even has journeys in it. And I feel like when I listen to this record, I'm on a musical journey with the two of you. So can you share, how does this improvised music work? And what got you both there? What brought you together and, form this connection?
Sure. So I prefer to think of it as not so much improvised music, but real-time composition. It is improvised, but it's very compositional. Mark and I both come from a composer background, like we've both composed orchestral works, I've written lots of other jazz pieces, a lot of string quartets. So we're coming at it from a very compositional background and approach. It just requires a lot of very intense listening when we're playing together, being willing to let the composition lead the way instead of one of us trying to lead the way. There are times where in a recording session, I will get a mental picture of the piece we're working on. And all I have to do is just follow that map or that score. Like I can actually see things as they're happening. And I feel like my job is just to stay out of the way and let that piece come to life. And I'm sure Mark will have some great comments on that process as well. As for how we met in 2008 or 9. We were introduced by a great music journalist named Billy Shepard, who had contacted both of us and said, you really need to know this guy. And so Billy introduced us and we met and just had an immediate artistic and personal connection just right away. And we've been recording and doing concerts ever since then. And Mark is just one of my favorite collaborators to work with.
One thing that I love about the excerpt that we just heard is that Mark doesn't come in for maybe a minute. And that's not an insult or a backhanded compliment there, Mark. I'm glad we don't hear Mark for a whole minute, but rather the fact that I can tell you're waiting, and I think one of the signs of a remarkable musician is the ability to wait, to join, to come in, at the right moment and to be listening for that moment and ready. So could you talk about, sort of there's definitely a lot of back and forth going on this record, and all of them. I mean, it's 2 people, but I think a lot of people might associate avant-garde with some of the earlier stuff like free jazz, where people are, it just sounds like they're just playing and then stuff happens to coincide. But this, as Kevin mentioned, is a real conversational aspect. So could you talk about the creative approaches to this type of playing?
Sure. Yeah, I think it comes from different places. I mean, one is that Kevin and I share quite a lot of musical influences. Um, so, like Kevin referred to the idea of it being kind of composing in real time, and that's kind of how I hear it as well. And I think we draw a lot on influences where it has a structure and it has space, and so there's that. And then I think there's also just, I mean, a lot of the music that I do when I'm, other than working with Kevin, is it's composed. There's chord changes, there's melody, and all of that, playing with a band. And so, but that's also improvised, but within a more jazz, fusiony, whatever you want to call it, setting. And so I'm used to kind of really listening and having other people kind of being like a conversation. So I mean, and Kevin's done a lot of that kind of music in the past. So I guess it's that as well. This kind of a conversational thing, which I've always liked. Yeah, I mean, when we're actually doing it, I'm listening to what Kevin's doing, because to me it's always really amazing and interesting. So it's like, wow, that's really amazing. I want to listen to that, and then I'll wait till it just feels like I hear my own kind of voice fitting into that or complementing that. And if it doesn't happen for a while, because what Kevin's doing just seems to be what's needed, then yeah, I won't play. And then I kind of try to just feel the moment, really. I think we both kind of do the same thing. Although sometimes we never plan out what we're going to do in any real way, but sometimes we'll say something like, let's have more space in this one, or let's have more of or you start, but we don't say when the next person's going to come in. Or we might say, let's make this one kind of more, trading back and forth. But to be honest, that never lasts. That's just a suggestion, and half the time we don't stick with that. We've said something else and we end up doing that, and it just depends how it feels at the time.
All right, I'm going to play our next excerpt. This one is called A Smear in Thunder. It's a shorter piece. Maybe we can go through the whole thing. Anything you want to prepare the listeners to listen for or to take note of?
I don't think so.
All right.
Go.
Open your ears, open your minds. Let's go. All right, I'm glad we played that one because on this one, Kevin is playing his 15-string extended classical guitar, and I need to apologize. I only put 30-string guitar in the title of this video, but you're playing a 36-string guitar, and I don't mean to make such mistakes, but these instruments are pretty wild, Kevin. Where are you finding these things?
First of all, in that last piece, I really need to say excellent work by Wingfield on that. That was some beautiful playing on that track. Nicely done. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I love, in headphones, you can hear Mark's electric guitar microphonically. Like you can hear the pick on the strings, and I love that sort of ambient, it feels like you're in the room with this performance.
So to answer your question, those guitars didn't exist until I was working with Alistair Hay at Emerald Guitars in Ireland. And I had been playing various Contra guitars, which is something else I designed, which are tuned one octave below concert tuning on guitar and have a much longer scale, more strings. I have two, one is 16 string and one is 17 string. And I had been talking to Dan Roberts, the luthier who made those, for years about a double neck, so I could have two sets of tunings on one instrument. And we just couldn't make it work because on a wood instrument, that kind of string pull would just destroy the instrument. So I met Alistair, and he builds all instruments out of carbon fiber, which is unbelievably strong and very resonant. So I started talking to him about a 30-string, which would be an 18-string Contra guitar and a 12-string alto guitar on the same instrument. And he built that around 2013, I think. And I just loved it, and I wanted to keep working with him. So I designed a 36-string Contra guitar, which is essentially two 18-string Contra guitars on one instrument, and they're in different tunings, actually very different tunings. So I play both necks simultaneously a lot of times. So it gives me a tremendously wide range and just all kinds of different colorations with the two different tunings that are happening. This classical that was on that track is another one from Emerald. It's all double courses except for the low A, E, and sub A strings are single course, but everything else is double course and includes a high A course above high E, and has kind of almost like a lute quality to the double courses. I just love it. It's just a whole other instrument. Just amazing. All of his instruments are just incredible. I love working with him.
Yeah, on this one, it sounded almost like the Middle Eastern. I think it's called an oud, where it's got several double-stringed strings and played with a pick. I can tell you're using a variety of strokes. You're hammering without picking. You're finger tapping on the right hand. And it sounded like you might have been using a pick, but I don't know what your nails look like either. But
I don't use a pick. I use all like classical technique except for tapping, and I keep my right fingernails pretty short so I can tap, but my right thumbnail is much longer, like you would see on most classical guitarists. So it's kind of a mix of long and short nails.
do you happen to have these instruments nearby?
I could grab one, sure. Hang on.
Okay. And while we're waiting, Mark, tell us about your gear. What are you using?
Well, I use this guitar, which I've been using for a long time. It's a Patrick Eggle 6-string guitar. It's handmade in England. And yeah, I love the way it plays, basically. I've got other guitars, but I always end up using this one. It's got some interesting stuff on it. It's got a sustainer, so that works kind of like feedback, except it works magnetically. So it takes a signal from this pickup, which is a normal pickup, and it feeds it back around and revibrates the strings with its own sound. And so you can sustain a note as long as you hold it down. It'll just sustain. And I've got this, which is a touch strip, which allows me to control the parameters on a laptop while I'm playing. So yeah. But apart from that, the guitar is pretty little bit down.
That is such a cool setup. All right, we have Kevin here. Kevin, you'll have to speak so the camera moves to you.
Okay, so this is the guitar I was playing on the last track. This is the 15-string extended classical. And you can see the courses, the low 3 courses are just single courses. And then everything else is double, and it's all tuned in unison. And I play everything in cello position, so all my instruments have been modified with a cello fitting. So I can play vertically. I don't have to hold on to the instrument. It just stays in perfect positions, which frees me up. I can use my thumb for long stretches. I can, easily tap multiple lines.
Mark, what was your first response when you saw Kevin with these instruments? I mean, you play a 6-string, and I don't think you've played a lot of extended range guitars, it looks like.
No, when we first started playing together, he didn't have these ones with that many strings. He had wooden instruments that have a limit to how many strings that the wood can actually support. They still had a lot of strings. I don't remember how many Kevin can tell you, but I remember picking them up and just like putting it back down again. There's no way.
Kevin, could we see the body of that guitar?
Sure.
You'll have to speak again so Zoom switches to you.
So it has one sound hole, a very large bridge, fan fret configuration,
Oh, and the blue rod out the bottom, that allows it to sit on the ground vertically, right? Just like a
Right.
cello.
It's a cello pen, right? I buy them from a violin shop, and all the instruments have those. That was a tremendous change in my playing because it just completely freed up my technique and what I could do. It was just phenomenal for me.
That's awesome. So we're almost out of time, and I think we could go on another half hour easily. So we should definitely have you back. But for anyone who's watching, just check out. There's a whole bunch of material from each of these guys. Mark has been on many Moon June Records releases, including a couple with Marcus Reuter. Were you on with Gary Husband?
Yeah, Gary and I did a duo album with
That's
piano
right.
and guitar, and we've actually recorded another album that's going to be coming out this summer with Gary and Tony Levin and Asaf Circus and Percy Jones. And Gary's playing drums and keyboards on that. So some of the tracks have two drums, Asaf and him playing at the same time, which is fun.
Wow, yeah. We do have some questions from the chat. If we could go through those really quickly. They're all from Sharon Baker, who's a wonderful volunteer moderator for us. But she asks, is there much editing of the pieces?
Very little.
Yeah, there might be, a stray sound or a stray note that gets cut, but pretty much what you hear is as it happened. In fact, one of our upcoming records was a live performance we did for WNYC Radio in New York City a few years ago. And we got the masters from that, so we're going to be releasing that at some point. And that is just all the pieces that we did for the show. So those were live with absolutely no editing.
Fantastic. She also asks, it seems travel and motion are more generally concepts here. I'm guessing she's looking at the cover and the song titles and that kind of thing. Anything to note?
I was responsible for the album title and the track titles. I always run everything by Wingfield to make sure he agrees with it or feels like that it matches the album concept and the pieces. And I just felt like that kind of this set of pieces kind of had that theme to them, sort of. And the cover art is done by a photographer in Budapest named Laszlo Hutin. He's done a few of my album covers, and I felt like that piece of art just really encapsulated everything that we'd done on the record. So, Laszlo, if you're watching, thank you again.
Excellent. So, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this record today.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for having us. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and it's been great being here.
Yeah, of course. And if you want to purchase the record, when we're listening, you'll see the URL at the top of the screen, but it's kevinkastning.bandcamp.com, or you can just go to either of the URLs here in the corner of the screen. That's Kevin's website, that's Mark's website, and those will take you to their Bandcamp pages. They are very prolific. It's they probably are featured on 10 to 15 records per year at least, whether it's a solo release or in an ensemble. So I've been meaning to talk to Kevin for a long time, and Mark and I have been in and out of touch here and there. So I'm really glad that we could get both of them here. And I listened to this new album, and I don't know, I just feel like there's something special going on. I've listened to most of your releases, but yeah, this one is really enjoyable. I mean, they're all enjoyable, just in different ways. So be sure to check out these albums on Bandcamp and to check out these guys' websites if you're interested in really interesting music and gear. They are two people to follow. Coming up on Make Weird Music, I want to get an interview with this guy named Jay Wasco, who some people might have seen, who built this incredible, crazy contraption that allows him to play a harp and trigger MIDI percussion and a keyboard and a bass. Everything's connected to a computer, and yeah, so look up WASCO J, like JAY, Jay Wasco. Awesome stuff. Follow him on Facebook, and I'm hoping to get an interview with him. Looks like when I get back from Europe in July. For the next few weeks, I'm leaving on Wednesday to go to England and start filming a documentary for Leonardo Pavkovich. So I'll be gone for 6 weeks, but I hope to still be filming some stuff. We might do a live stream or two. We'll see how internet quality is on the road. But thank you for everyone who's been joining our live streams. If you want to support Make Weird Music, there's a little join button below the video player on YouTube, and it's $3 a month, and you get to help us out, make this thing not come entirely out of my pocket all the time, and that makes my wife happy. So everyone, thank you for joining this video, and again, Mark and Kevin, thanks for putting out this music and joining us today.
Thanks, Anthony.
All right.
Thanks.
One final track. We'll listen to some of Arrival, which is the final track on the album.